Kigali. I think we've been, some of you have been with us 2 weeks ago, so it's again my pleasure to welcome you back. And Usman has made me the MC of the day, but he put it politely, so I'm the chair of the launch. But as he mentioned, I want to apologize for my boss, the Prime Minister, Dr. Ngirente of Rwanda. He has been called for another urgent appointment at the last minute, so I'll be standing in on his behalf. But once again, I want to welcome all of you. I hope Her Excellency Josepha Sako has joined us. Did she?
She was supposed to join us.
Okay,
I think she is, right? She just spoke. Are you with us?
Okay, so once again.
Please go ahead. She will join us.
Yeah, so we will welcome her when she joined, but particularly I want Dr. Jim Bernard, Dr. Jocelyn, and the DG of IFPRI, you, Dr. Usman Badian, the chairperson of, executive chairperson of AKADEMIYA2063. I want also to welcome our distinguished Board of Trustees of AKADEMIYA2063. I also want to welcome our distinguished keynote speakers who have joined us today. And as I said, it's my honor to be the chair of this launch. Again, a very warm welcome to Kigali, Rwanda virtually. So as we are now meeting to launch officially the Academia 2063, which is an organization that was established in Kigali in January this year. Probably I want to mention that. And it's an initiative that is to shape up policies for rapidly transforming agriculture and food systems. So this launch, it is organized around 5 sessions. We are going to proceed with opening statements by some of us. And then our distinguished Board of Trustees will have time to introduce themselves. And then we will proceed for the keynote presentations by 2 of our keynote speakers. Then we'll have a roundtable discussion. And then after all of that, we are going to proceed to the closing sessions. So distinguished guests, let me once again welcome you and open the session. So we are going to start by Dr. Swinen, the DG of IFPRI. So DG, it's my distinguished honor to welcome you virtually to Kigali, waiting to have you physically, but please proceed with your opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for this opening, for this invitation, this introduction. Of course, I would have so much more preferred to be in Kigali at this moment than sitting here behind my desk. I think I speak for all of us when I say that. So, Excellency Minister Mukashima, Excellency Joseph Sako, the distinguished colleagues Jim Barnard and Chairman Usman Badian, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a great pleasure and a great honor together for me to speak here at the official launch of Academia 2063. I think this is a very important moment obviously for Academia 2063. I think it's also a very important moment for everybody concerned about food security, poverty, agricultural development around the world, and particularly in Africa. It is also a very important moment for IFPRI. I think the feeling at IFPRI right now, it's a bit like parents when they see their children go up and leave the house. So we have a feeling of sadness because we want to keep them close to our house, our home, our family. But at the same time, we're really proud that they go out on their own feet, on their own legs, towards a very promising future and going to change the world, maybe even better than we could as parents. Over the last 15 years, IFPRI's Africa Regional Office Program, under the leadership of Ousmane Badiane, and involving many colleagues which today have joined the AKADEMIYA2063 team, they have led the Regional Strategic Analysis and Knowledge Support System, so-called RESACS program, the African Growth and Development Policy Modeling Consortium, the AgroDep program, and also the Malabo Montpellier panel, as you all know, I'm sure. So I very much commend the team on their continued dedication, their hard work to support the African Union and its member states, and particularly through data analysis, institution, as well as technical capacity building, and to successfully implement the comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program. This has been a key for sustained increase in public investment in agriculture and the adoption of more supportive agriculture policies. These have all enabled many African countries to achieve impressive gains in economic growth in general, but also in agricultural productions, rural incomes, and reductions in poverty. In this regard, building African capacity and institutions has been a long-term goal of the African Union, but also of IFPRI and of our partners. AKADEMIYA2063 today represents a very timely accomplishment of institutionalization over a decade of expertise and partnership in an African organization. Let me express very clearly that it is our strong intention to keep collaborating with AKADEMIYA63 to build a better future for Africa and specifically to reduce poverty and enhance nutrition and food security. IFPRI intends to continue to play an important role by contributing research and policy analysis in collaboration with AKADEMIYA2063 and by supporting its institutional development and that of similar African organizations. Although it's a huge challenge to replace Ousmane Badiane, if not to say it's impossible, we have gone out and I'm very happy and excited to announce that we are welcoming a new director for Africa, Dr. Jemima Njuki. She has decades of experience in gender and rural development and agricultural development in general in Africa. And we believe that as new director for Africa, this will strengthen our collaboration with African countries in general and Research Institute and AKADEMIYA2063 in particular. I should remember you that this is taking place against the background when IFPRI is going through a major institutional reorganization because we transitioned to the one CGIAR, okay, an integration of many agricultural research institutes in developing countries. And in this perspective, we will continue to work on many key areas like agricultural investment, development strategies, etc., which are also of interest to AKADEMIYA2063. And we hope to bring even more worldwide perspectives and experience on this issue and to promote mutual learning opportunities across countries and across institutes. Let me end by emphasizing that a strong partnership between IFPRI and AKADEMIYA2063 will further amplify the impact of our work, our joint work, I would say, in supporting agricultural growth, economic transformation, and greater prosperity in Africa. We know there's still a long way ahead, but we are confident and hopeful in our progress and committed to do even better. And again, let me emphasize, we are most proud to see AKADEMIYA2063 leave the nest, stand on its own feet, and build a big future for itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, DG, and thank you for sharing with us your pride of seeing your child leaving the nest and standing up for his or her own feet. It's really an exciting time. And I think we really appreciate your commitment to continuing partnering with AKADEMIYA23 for the development of research and development in Africa. So the following speaker is you, Dr. Bernard. Dr. Bernard is Assistant Administrator of USAID for those who joined late. So Dr. Bernard, it's my pleasure to invite you to deliver your statement as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Rwandan Minister of Agriculture, Geraldine Mukashimana, both for hosting Academia 2063 in this meeting from Kigali. It's a great honor to join you. I also want to thank Her Excellency African Union Commissioner Ambassador Josepha Sako for her support for Academia 2063. And thank you to Dr. Osman Badian, Director of the Academia 2063, for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here, and congratulations on the launch of Academia 2063. And obviously, Dr. Swinton over at IFPRI, congratulations to you as well, and to the board members and everyone on the call. It's wonderful to join you. All protocols observed. Today's conversation is timely. You know, it's crucial that countries continue, if not increase, investing in food systems and stay the course with enabling sound policy. This can boost the COVID-19 response and recovery in the short term and eliminate poverty and hunger in the long term. Smart public investments that strengthen African food systems, accelerate and protect progress, and attract private investment depend upon good data, analysis, and strong policy systems. For nearly 2 decades, the Regional Knowledge System Support, our Agriculture Growth and Development Policy, and the Malabo-Montpellier programs have served as a cornerstone of the policy agenda of the Comprehensive African Agriculture Development Program, or as we all call it, CADEP. It's an essential resource and example for policymakers across the continent. USAID has been proud to support these efforts. And just last week, we celebrated our 10-year anniversary of the US government's Feed the Future program, through which we've worked alongside African governments and peoples to transform food systems and boost nutrition and resilience. We're pleased to be here with you today and to be with all of you for another major milestone. As a CADEP partner, we're deeply committed to and invested in the success of African countries in eliminating poverty and hunger. And I'd like to thank Director General Joe Swinton for hosting and nurturing these programs, and for the support and commitment to devolving these to African-owned and hosted programs under Academia 2063. Steadfast African leadership and strong African institutions like Academia 2063 are the foundation of a resilient and prosperous continent. At USAID, our role as a development partner is to work alongside African countries and regional institutions to strengthen commitment and capability to achieve the development goals we all share. Events like this one, where we're celebrating the inauguration of a strong, capable African institution that will help African leaders achieve the Agenda 2063, are an example to reaffirm our commitment and recommit ourselves to the ideal of African ownership. Inclusive agriculture-led growth is fundamental to eliminating poverty and hunger on the African continent. And strong policy systems that generate enabling policies are the catalyst for such growth. We're already seeing great progress. So I'd like to applaud the African head state and the African Union for recognizing and committing to inclusive agriculture-led growth in the Maputo and Malabo declarations. Countries that have committed to the CADEP process, including the biennial review of progress towards the Malabo commitments in CADEP 2025, for its top scores on the biennial review, which includes increasing budgetary support for agriculture. We support Rwanda's goal to surpass its 2018 budget allocation and fully meet the target set forward by CADEP. However, over the past 4 years, we have seen the stagnation of agriculture-led growth in Africa. It's associated with stagnant and even declining government investment in and policy support for agriculture. This concerning trend may be exacerbated during the COVID-19 pandemic. But on the bright side, there is also a new recognition of the urgency behind the importance of food systems. We're at a crossroads, with both new challenges and new possibilities for fulfilling commitments to growth and development through agriculture-led processes. How the global community responds now at this critical juncture will determine how food systems in Africa and around the world will recover and build even more resilient systems after the pandemic. Sensible and effective policymaking will require an accurate picture of current opportunities for maintaining or augmenting investments in agriculture and food systems. In addition to support from local organizations that can gather and analyze data, process information, and provide thought leadership. So today, with the urgency of not just COVID-19, but also locusts, conflict, and other shocks, the need for organizations such as AKADEMIYA2063 is greater than ever. We recognize the full potential that AKADEMIYA2063 has in providing political leaders with the evidence, thought leadership, and support. Within the COVID-19 context and beyond, AKADEMIYA2063 will be instrumental in enabling policy and investment for inclusive agriculture-led growth that builds resilience, improves food security, and water security, and secures positive nutritional outcomes for the next generation of Africans. So with this potential comes the obligation to engage in processes and programs that help unlock agriculture growth for the good of all of Africa. And as a partner in this endeavor, we will hold both ourselves and AKADEMIYA2063 accountable for fulfilling this potential and obligation. USAID is proud to have supported AKADEMIYA2063 in its inception as a set of IFPRI programs through its inauguration as a self-standing think tank and an initiative that is local in incorporation, continental in reach, and world-class in quality. We're honored to continue to support these programs in their new home and intend to continue financial support for AKADEMIYA2063 as you progress on your journey to self-reliance. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today. I cannot overstate how pleased I am to participate in this important gathering. We must now join together and begin the hard work. And I want to re-emphasize that we stand with you, with AKADEMIYA Union, and with the people of Africa in working our hardest to solve poverty and food security in our lifetimes, if not sooner. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Bernard, for having supported IFPRI to incubate Academia 2063, but also for the pledge to continue to support it. So, distinguished guests, now it's my honor to invite Her Excellency Ambassador Sako to deliver her statement.
Good afternoon, my dear sister. Thank you, my sister Minister Geraldine. Good afternoon, every one of you. Let me start. I don't know if His Excellency the Prime Minister is around. I have him, on my speech, and I wanted to. Hello. Her Excellency.
He's not around.
Okay. Excellency Gerald Mukeshimana, the Minister of Agriculture of the Republic of Rwanda, my dear sister, my brother, Dr. Ousmane Badiane, Executive Chairperson of Academia 2063. I'm laughing because he was calling me when I was in another event. So that is why I really organize my time and I'm present.
Thank you.
Mr. Joy Swinen, Director General of the International Food Policy Research Institute, Mr. Jim Brannon, Assistant to the Administrator of the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocol duly observed. Good afternoon, every one of you. Good morning and good evening, depending where you are connected. And welcome to this auspicious occasion event in the face of COVID-19, which is becoming the new normal. I pray we all continue to stay safe. Let me begin by thanking His Excellency Edouard Ningerent, Prime Minister of the Republic of Rwanda for honoring us in his presence. Also thank my sister, Her Excellency Geraldine Mukeshimana, the Minister of Agriculture of the Republic of Rwanda, for gracing us with a presence. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Jim Barnard, Assistant to the Administrator of the United States '63, our newborn baby, board of trustee, this gentleman. We have come a long way working with the research by IFPRI. We are grateful for the tremendous support and delighted to see Academia 2063 standing on African soil today. All of these achievements are the product of cooperation between a large number of partners and collaborators alongside IFPRI's leading role. I am pleased to acknowledge USAID for their long-standing support. They are the first organization to commit to support and assisting the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program, AKADEP. Since then, they have never looked back and over the years showed steady support for this. We are very grateful to you. We thank the government of Rwanda and the people of the Republic of Rwanda for hosting Academia 2063 at home in our continent in Africa, made in Africa, which is no doubt a valuable asset for our continent. This is not better place to host the institution than Rwanda. There is no better place to host the institution than Rwanda, which is doing very well in several areas, including agriculture, where they have led the 2 editions of the biannual review report so far. Congratulations, Madam Minister, for your real performance. We have also seen what the various programs have accomplished in the past and are confident that the achievements are going to be even greater with proximity for clients and member states. Africa's economy and Africa's agriculture have done better over the last 2 decades than ever before. Much progress has been achieved, but a lot more remains to be done. If the ambition of CADEP and Agenda 2063 are to become reality, we need to build on our successes and learn from our mistakes. That makes the need for organizations such as Academia 2063 even greater. The analysis of story, learn, scale up good practices. Evaluation of past effort help us build the institutional memory to avoid past error. Better data and analytics helps us to anticipate problems and appropriate solution. That's an area where we really need to concentrate. Really, giving evidence-based and good advice to our leaders. Learning from rich experience, yet no doubt that the year 2060 will continue to fulfill above expectation by continuing to mobilize African expertise and engaging with key African organizations and stakeholders. Let me therefore close by welcoming Academia 2063 board members. My department and I very much look forward to further enhancing our excellent partnership. I thank you very much for your kind attention. I submit.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, my big sister, for such a warm welcome to the Academia on the continent. We are really thrilled to have it in its home. So, Your Excellencies, I think I need to change my hat and wear the hat of my boss. So, Your Excellency, Ambassador Josepha Sako, AUC Commissioner, Dr. Jim Bernard, USAID Assistant Administrator, Dr. Johan Swinen, IFPRI Director General, Dr. Osman Badian, Executive Chairperson of Academia 2063, Academia 2063 board members, keynote speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, once more, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where all of us are connected from. As we virtually meet to officially launch Academia 2063 today, I would like to welcome you all to Kigali, Rwanda. In Rwanda, we are very happy that we have been chosen as a home of Academia 2063. Let me also take this opportunity to welcome the Academia 2063 Board of Trustees and our distinguished speakers. We are grateful to IFPRI and its management for having incubated research, AgroDep, and Mamo Panel programs for the last decade. We know that IFPRI has many strong partners who made this great milestone that we are celebrating today possible. I want to recognize the support of USAID for these programs for more than 10 years. Academia 2063 is now fully capable of taking over and operating the programs that are so valuable to our agenda across the continent. The launch of operations of Academia 2063 is an important and a timely step. As we all know, the Malabo Declaration provides the direction for Africa's agricultural transformation for the period of 2015 to 2025. This is done within the framework of the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program, AKADEP. Therefore, Academia 2063 is expected to play a major role in strengthening data systems and mutual accountability processes in Africa in support of this program. As highlighted by the 2019 biannual review on the progress of implementing the Malabo Declaration, only 4 countries were on track toward achieving the AKADEP Malabo commitment by 2025. This shows that a lot is yet to be done, and us as African countries, we are required to show commitments toward achieving our targets. This review also shows that some countries were unable to report on some indicators due to lack of data. We therefore hope that with the expertise of AKADEMIYA2063, African countries will be able to provide credible, timely, and high quality data on Malabo commitments. This will also facilitate in guiding agricultural policy, planning, and implementation. In Rwanda, we have a clear understanding of the importance of data, analytics, and evidence in facilitating effective policy planning and implementation by governments. We have benefited over the last decade or so some works of research, AgroDeep, and MOMO panel under the leadership of IFPRI. Dear participants, before I conclude, I want to thank my sister, Ambassador Josepha Sako, the Commissioner for African Union, for her leadership in steering the African agenda and mobilizing expertise across the continent through partnerships with various programs that are part of AKADEMIYA2063. Madam, I'm confident that you will continue to do so, and we look forward to working with you to make sure that AKADEMIYA2063 will remain a leader in data, analytics, and knowledge in support of African agenda. I also want to reiterate that Rwanda looks forward to collaborating with AKADEMIYA2063 as a major science contributor to the Agenda 2063. With that, it is my pleasure on behalf of the Prime Minister of Rwanda, Dr. Ngirente Edward, to declare open the event, formally launching the operations of AKADEMIYA2063 in Rwanda. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister, Your Excellency. We will now be going to the second part of this morning. Thank you to all who have come and joined us and graced us with their presence for this opening session. Madam Minister, I just took the floor because Joachim von Braun is on the road and couldn't make it to join us now. So your next speaker is going to be there for Dr. Maximo Torero, Chief Economist from FAO. Just wanted to give you that message. Thank you.
Maximo, it's your turn. If Maximo is getting ready, let's proceed to introduction of our distinguished board of trustees. We are going to be, they are going to be.
I'm sorry, Excellency. We have a video to play for Dr. Massimo Torero. He will be joining.
Let us introduce the board members first, and then we do the video. So let's go with the introduction.
Okay, so our board of trustees are going to be introducing themselves. We give them the floor. And we start by Ambassador Eltarin Kazin. Ambassador.
Thank you very much, my friend and my sister, Madam Minister. It's always good to be in your presence. My name is Eartharin Cousin. I am the former U.S. ambassador to the FAO and the former executive director of the United Nations World Food Program. I am proud to serve as now the vice chair of AKADEMIYA2063 and look forward to the work that we will accomplish together in delivering the policy policies that are necessary to support the achievement of an African agriculture system that not only provides the economic support to farmers, but the food security that nourishes all of the continent. I thank you very much for this opportunity to be here with you today.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. It's all the time a pleasure to see you. So the next speaker is Ms. Terry Search. Terry.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and congratulations to Academia on their launch today. I'm very excited to be one of the board members. So you said my name is Terry Sarch. I'm the current UK ambassador to the UN Food and Agriculture Agencies in Rome, and a long-term fan of CAADP. And I'm very much looking forward to working with Academia as it goes forward. Thanks very much, and back over to you.
Thank you so much, Terry. The next is Dr. Ismahan Elwafi.
Hi, Your Excellency, Geraldine. Good to be with you. I'm Ismahan Elwafi. I'm right now the Director General of ICBA, International Center Biosaline Agriculture, which is based in the United Arab Emirates. And soon I'm gonna move on to go to FAO as the Chief Scientist. It's really a pleasure to be a board member with AKADEMIYA2063. Osman is a long-term friend, and IFPRI, I'm on the board of IFPRI. This is my 6th year. So I know the program from my perspective as a board member in IFPRI, and I'm really delighted to join the board of AKADEMIYA2063, as I like the narrative of Joe and the analogy with the parents seeing their children grow up and be independent and do better. So that's really nice. And I think really Africa needs an organization like AKADEMIYA2063. We have all the talent in the continent. We have all the resources in the continent. We have it all to make it happen. So I am behind AKADEMIYA2063, and I have pleasure to contribute to Africa food security, water security, nutrition security. We have it all. We need just to have a plan and put it in place. So thank you very much, and looking forward to continue working with you. Thank you, Your Excellency. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ismahan, and congratulations for joining FAO as a Chief Scientist. It's really an exciting time. I'm so proud of you. So the next speaker is Vixen Kube. Is Vixen Kube around?
Yes, I was just waiting to be unmuted.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your coming to launch AKADEMIYA2063. My name is Vixen Ngube, currently the Chief Executive Officer of the Pan-African Federation of Accountants. I always introduce myself as an African who travels on a Zambian passport, because I believe Africa is my continent and my home from Cape to Cairo and everything in between. I am especially excited to be part of the Academia Board of Trustees, and I look forward to learning a lot from my colleagues who understand agriculture better and play my role. And I have the honor of being asked to serve as chair of the Audit and Risk Committee by my colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vixen. The next speaker is Dr. Paul Inger. Paul, are you around?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Your Excellency. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Thank you, Your Excellency. I'm very honored to be part of this beautiful initiative. My own background is that I was one of the first generations of knowledge systems researchers in agriculture at Wageningen University and in practice. And I'm so very glad that now we are actually building the African agricultural knowledge systems as we were dreaming with the NEPAD Secretariat and others 15, 20 years ago, I think. So I'm happy to be on the board because maybe my own experience for 15 years at the head of European Center for Development Policy Management may help me to contribute to the thinking and to the growth of the institute. And I'm all for African initiative and African agriculture development. In that sense, I am a European traveling on a Dutch passport, but as you know, the Dutch are very globalist. So I will try to do my best to be able to contribute. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, and welcome. Our next speaker is Jimmy Adum. Dr. Jimmy.
Madam Minister, Dr. Adum is not with us. He got mixed up with the time. He thought it was 15 hours Kigali time, but he's not in Kigali. He is in Burkina Faso and in another meeting. So we'll skip him. That also means that I'll be chairing the roundtable when we get to that.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Badian. Please, all of us, please join me to welcome our distinguished Board of Trustees. We are delighted to have them on the board of AKADEMIYA2063. So please, I want to take time to especially welcome you to Kigali. I hope after this pandemic, we'll be able to meet physically, but I want to extend my warm welcome to all of you. So I can't wait to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I think Dr. Badian, the next session, I think we call Maximo for the presentation.
And he sent us a video just to make sure that we get it right. So Nabud, would you like to give the presentation? There's no sound. You want to start again? There's no sound. All right, so let's maybe go to Professor Njuguna Ndungu as you saw that the video. Should we do that?
Sure, let's go to him and then we come back to Maximo.
Thank you very much, and I'm very delighted. I'm talking from Nairobi, Kenya, and so it is in the evening, so it is getting chilly. That's why, even though I'm in the office, I had to wear a jacket on. It was warmer before. Now, I'm very happy on behalf of the African Economic Research Consortium Network to welcome AKADEMIYA2063, and I'm very happy that my friend and long-term supporter of ARC, Osman, is here, and including so many other people. And I'm very happy that we are actually here trying to actually usher in a specific organization that is going to support us to 2063. ARC has been here for the last 32 years. This is maybe going to 33 years. And the bottom line is that we have been supporting capacity to actually enhance institutional strengthening for policymaking in Africa. I'm very delighted about that kind of initiative that has populated think tanks and even top-notch institutions in Africa with that kind of capacity. So I'm very happy that we're being joined by Academia 2063, which is also coming from IFPRI, which has been a long-term supporter of AERC in different programs, and also supported by bilateral government of the United States, that is through USAID. So what I was told to make a presentation on something on the economic recovery after the COVID. And I thought that is something that is actually, let me share the screen first of all, so that at least we can be together. I thought that is, sorry, I'm going to share a screen on, I hope, yeah. I hope this is something that we are all looking forward to in terms of economic recovery. But more importantly, I think academia is going to be dealing with very critical sectors that are actually dealing with the issues of economic recovery. But let me stick to the script that I was given. I was told to talk about economic recovery after the COVID. And one of them is actually to look at what the policy responses as well as the buffers required in this economic recovery. But of course, let me say that I can't, can you see my slides before I even continue?
Yes, you may want to go on display mode so it's bigger. We can see your presentation.
Okay. Oh, okay, let me see how I do that. I'm operating with different.
The bottom right, there's that screen.
Yeah. Let me go to that. Is that okay?
No, but well, maybe it's taking time to come. Otherwise, go to the bottom right. There's next to the slider there. There's a icon that looks like all the way.
What about now? What about now?
Okay, let's see what's happening. Something is coming.
Yeah, I think it's taking a bit of time.
Okay, there it is.
Oh, it is there. Okay. Good. Let me first of all, there is always marketing just to show our convergence between Academia 2063 and ourselves, African Economic Research Consortium. We are a capacity building network that uses research, graduate training in economics, and now we also have agricultural economics, including also PhD, and a policy outreach program. And within that, there's so many, should I say, activities and even programs that try to push this. But the idea is actually to build institutions and network to actually populate or even create a critical mass of well-informed policymakers, policy analysts, thought leaders in Africa. I'm one of the examples of that, but we can talk about that later. What's the background of this topic that I was told to talk about? One, first, is that Africa has just reported close to 1.4 million cases of COVID-19 and infections, and over just slightly over 33,000 fatalities, or what we are calling deaths. By world standard, this is less severe. It does appear that Africa has a less severe case, but this perhaps I cannot say it is a success story. It may reflect more on the weak testing capacity and perhaps even accurate reporting causes of death. But we still know that Africa has accounted for less than 5% of global infections. And even though it has about 20% of the world population, and the fatality rate is about 2%, and the average, the world average is about 3%. But the economic and social impacts are actually enormous than even the rest of the countries. First, because of the initial conditions, but more importantly, in terms of the growth was weak and before the pandemic. What we are really seeing is that the GDP growth in Africa is actually likely to decline by 5%. That is by minus 5%. And will continue to contract by minus 0.5% in 2021. And we don't seem to see a recovery even by 2022. And I'm not so sure how long it will take for us to see the pre-COVID growth rate of 3.2%. And that is something that is, right now, we cannot predict because we haven't seen the end of the pandemic, but the whole issue is to paint a very grave picture. African countries have a diversity of infection policy responses, and I think some of us, in terms of looking at various interventions that are required, we have seen ourselves, we have come and found ourselves in the period, should I say, in a situation where we may have to look at even characteristics of diversity of African countries. And one of them is the general picture that is coming up is that post-conflict countries tend to suffer more. Those who are weak, we even had a program that targeted fragile countries. One of the initial papers, the initial policy briefs that we produced soon after the COVID was fragility of growth in Africa that we had worked on for so many years, and we had targeted conflict and post-conflict countries. We actually showed that it was fragile growth, but now with the COVID, fragility was going to be extended. And even the countries that follow, in this case, is the middle income countries that have been, should I say, more affected, but the least affected countries are non-oil exporting countries, low-income countries. And obviously this has been a very severe case that even though they were least affected, there's faster affection rates that are coming up. The second thing that we have been working on is actually to look at poverty, the impacts of poverty and inequality, especially at household level. Right now, we are working on recent data that is being conducted via mobile phone to show actually what is happening in 5 countries: Senegal, Ghana, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Uganda. And it's showing that the success, or even that policy success in the last 2 decades in terms of poverty and inequality, seems to have been reversed by the COVID. Then the next question is, how should the policymakers respond? And what lessons do we carry forward for the future? And more importantly, what kind of buffers do we need to put in place in the future? Okay. Sorry, my is moving faster. The appropriate policy and administrative responses. I'm going to be brief because essentially these are issues that we are still pondering on. We don't have very strong conclusions on all of them. But the first thing is to notice that African economies have been affected by the pandemic from the supply side, from the supply and demand side. The demand side is is actually aggravated by a historical problem that we had already observed. 3 years ago, we had discussions in Helsinki with WIDA. And one of the arguments was that aggregate demand in rural Africa was declining and the youth were migrating to the urban areas. So it means that we're already talking about supply and demand side, but even aggregate demand had a historical problem of declining and forcing the youth to migrate to urban centers. And we already in the last 5 years, we were talking about youth unemployment. So essentially, then recovery depends will depend on the magnitude of supply shock across sectors and the capacity of government to facilitate conditions for recovery, as well as recovery in the global demand. And we can even come up with examples in terms of what is likely to happen, especially African countries that depend very specifically on commodities and their exports and what is likely to happen. And we have seen that in the last 20 or so years, so many things have changed. But on the domestic demand side, both governments and household consumptions have been affected by the pandemic, and the revenues have actually shrunk. And it's going to take quite some time for incomes to recover and even demand to be restored to its post-COVID levels. In this context, perhaps the following important considerations as policy responses in the short term could be considered. At the macro level, governments need to consolidate their budget, adjust the exchange rate, and manage demand to the time when supply is fully restored. Of course, in this part of the world, exchange rate is always an emotive issue. Most of the governments in African region would like to argue that they are in a floating exchange rate. But of course, when they are hit by current account deficit, they quickly manage the exchange rate. And of course, we have seen distortion, price distortion in the domestic markets. And this is something that we're going to see how we can actually have a sensible debate in terms of what should be done. But the second point is actually to assist businesses to reach their full capacity through incentives that are likely to come through stimulus packages, well-designed stimulus packages, appropriate liquidity supply management. And this was the initial impact, the initial factor that financial systems were trying to see how they can actually restructure loans for SMEs and middle income. But right now we have seen devastating consequences of other sectors like the tourism sector. But the whole issue is how we can actually also design and monitor appropriate and adequate public safety protocols that are going to be helpful to the sector, to the totality of the economies. But we still cannot run away from talking about post-COVID economic recovery programs and at least put our thoughts together. Here, I think I found myself looking at what has devoured most of the African economies. One of them is fiscal space has been devoured. Public debt has increased. Youth unemployment is likely to increase even further, and declining aggregate demand in rural Africa. But the first line of defense when the pandemic struck was to protect lives. But we have seen that we have to move faster and protect private investments. And we have had a lot of debate in terms of how do we protect private investments. But we also need to protect, regulate, and nudge the markets to the required directions, because markets will be very, very important in the recovery period. And we need to safeguard development budget, and that will help in terms of providing capacity for future growth for African economies. When there is no fiscal space, the first impact that falls on government budget is actually development budget. When you devour development budget, it means that you ruin or you actually weaken the capacity for future growth. And this is actually dismal. And the final point on this is actually the digital development and the digital space, which was useful in some countries that had embraced digital innovation, because they quickly designed targeted social protection programs that are working. We could use those social protection programs for other means because the technology is there and perhaps the network is there. For me, that is going to be very, very important. Finally, it's a question of what are the required buffers. And the pandemic has revealed that there is an untapped potential in African societies and resilience of its own citizens that include perhaps what we saw in the first few months or the first few weeks of the pandemic was massive interpersonal transfers that was protecting millions of people from vagaries of hunger. We saw massive individual and corporate resources and material transfers to government for safety nets. Of course, in some countries it was misused and it is becoming a very major political issue. We have seen creativity by health workers in managing the pandemic and businesses producing PPEs. And the pandemic revealed that the government needs to have a government community partnership. We have always never managed to work with PPPs. Outside Rwanda in Africa, I don't know of any country that has worked very well with the PP, public-private partnerships. But at least this is a wake-up call so that we can actually manage to move with the PPPs. But we need to look at the future and what buffers we can selfishly protect, and it can also protect us for any future pandemics. And one of them is food security buffers, and at least I know IFPRI is going to be good in this. And of course, with that, it also goes with energy buffers, because we are not likely, if we don't get the pandemics, we are going to get the droughts. Foreign exchange buffers, of course, that is something I have argued in my papers in the past, and because I was a central banker, so I know what it really means. But the fiscal space buffer is always very, very important, but it's one that is quite elusive, but we still cannot manage, we cannot fail to talk about it. And then, of course, protect and build strong capital development budget for future, which is going to provide capacity for future growth. These are very important for the post-COVID recovery, but but we can always have a debate in terms of what we start with, how can we provide a ranking which is going to be feasible given the circumstances that we are in. I think I will stop there because I really wanted just to make an introduction to that. But from this side of the world, I'm left to say Asante Sana. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Njuguna. Let's see if we can have Maximo now.
Excellencies, dear colleagues, dear Usman, it's a pleasure for me to be today in the launch of AKADEMIYA2063. I am going to speak today about the infrastructure needs for fast transforming of food systems and looking carefully to hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition and urbanization. Let me show my presentation. As we all know, the definition of food security involves several elements: availability, access, utilization, and stability. But food security exists when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meet their dietary needs and food preferences. And to be able to achieve this, we need infrastructure. There is no way we will be able to have availability of food, access to food by consumers, and proper utilization and stability if we don't have a proper infrastructure in place. Not only that, food security is driven by the structure of food systems and the conduct of factors of each of the food systems. Infrastructure plays a key role in each of these different elements and contributes to the overall performance of the system. There are two kinds of infrastructure, and their positive impact on the systems vary. The first is the enabling environment, what we call hard infrastructure: roads, grids, electrification, rail lines, shipping facilities, ports, waste management, facility sanitation, sewerage systems, telecommunications, and ICTs. But the second one, which is more linked to the producer, is what the infrastructure across the value chain, which includes from production like irrigation to aggregation like storage, processing plants, wholesale markets, retail markets, and storage. All this is part of what we call the agro-based clusters, and it requires a systemic approach to be able to link farmers to markets and to consumers. The positive impact of infrastructure on economic prosperity and business is well recognized. Improved infrastructure positively affects productivity and encourage more regional integration and trade, something which today is central because of the crisis of COVID-19. Intra-regional trade could be a huge opportunity, but for Africa today, lack of infrastructure is a barrier to accelerate interregional trade. Now, what is this infrastructure bringing? First, allows farmers to sell their produce to the larger market more frequently during the year at competitive prices. Second, it enables the goods and services which support farming to reach farms more efficiently and at least cost. It improves the efficiency of food distribution by providing better connectivity throughout the year and lower transport costs. And it enables reductions of wastage and damage of products. It will allow us to increase the efficiency and productivity of farm food production, processing, preservation, and distribution. And of course, will empower as a result the population. So there is a clear positive impact on improving food security and on ensuring zero hunger. For example, improved road conditions reduce the transport cost of bananas in Kenya by 14%. And improved access to roads and railways significantly reduces food losses, as explained in the SOFA. Why is this so important? We are facing a terrible challenge. World hunger is still increasing, even before COVID-19, up by 10 million people in 1 year and nearly 60 million people in 5 years. And if we look beyond hunger, over 2 billion people do not have regular access to safe and nutritious and sufficient food. The world is not on track to eradicate hunger. In recent trends continue, the number of hungry people will surpass 840 million people by 2030. And we are not on track to defeat malnutrition. While there is some progress in child stunting and breastfeeding, child overweight is not improving and adult obesity is rising. COVID-19 poses a serious threat to food security. We know that up to 132 more million people will join the undernourishment. This means that by 2030, we'll be over 900 million people undernourished. So it's essential to create a change and to transform our food system. And Africa is one of the continents which carry most of the burden. 19.1% of prevalence of undernourishment in Africa. This is double the world average, which is 8.9%, and the highest among all regions. And this means 250 million people undernourished in the continent, even before COVID-19. And COVID-19 is going to add on top of this. This needs to change, and clearly infrastructure will play a role. We know that the major drivers behind the food insecurity and undernourishment are conflict, climate variability and extremes, economic slowdowns and downturns, and cost and affordability of healthy diets. And across all these drivers, infrastructure can play a role to improve them. It can help to improve, and we know that there is a significant positive returns between infrastructure and getting access to nutritious food to the markets at lower cost. This shows how it increases the level of access to food for different countries in Africa. Public investments to improve road networks can lead to a significant annual reductions in the cost of nutrient-adequate diet. Today, 3 billion people don't have access to healthy diets, and a significant part of those are in the African continent. So infrastructure could play a crucial role. However, in sub-Saharan Africa, infrastructure gaps persist. 29% of the proportion of rural population who live within 2 kilometers of an all-season road. 45% proportion of population with access to electricity in 2018. 53% on the roads are unpaved. So weak infrastructure and poorly functioning food markets add to the final price of consumers, undermining food security in its fourth dimension, as I mentioned before: availability, access, utilization, and stability. And studies already have shown that poor road, rail, and port facilities has 30% to 40% to the cost of goods traded among African countries. Today, one of the major barriers of interregional trade in Africa is access to infrastructure, good roads, good ports that allow mobility of goods within the continent. Despite of the African Trade Agreement, roads and infrastructure are a major constraint in addition to non-tariff barriers. So this needs to change. COVID-19 has shown the potential of interregional trade, and that's something that we need to change today. A broad array of infrastructure investments along the entire food value chain, especially targeted to nutritious foods, are needed to reduce losses and waste and improve efficiencies. We know that there is inadequate food storage and limited food preservation capacity. FAO is doing a huge effort to deploy and identify optimal locations of storage facilities and cooling facilities so that farmers can use them to store their produce. Not only that, these facilities will improve technology and infrastructure in handling and processing. Why this is central? Because it will increase the resilience of farmers. It will allow them to sell when they should sell, because they are able to store, and they will allow them, if we link them to the financial system, to be able to get liquidity using factoring to get benefits from this storage capacity. We also need to improve the market infrastructure. We need to improve in processing and preservation facilities. Limited processing technology today. We need to invest in agriculture production infrastructure is central to be able to achieve the goal of reduction of undernourishment. Policy and public investment in infrastructure are also critically important in addressing other key drivers behind hunger. We need to build climate-proof infrastructure solutions, resilience, repair of damaged infrastructure from climate-related disasters, repair of damaged infrastructure from conflict, which will allow mobility, which will allow coming back to produce. Conflict occurs many times in areas which are productive, so we need to rebuild them. We need to have infrastructure investments in conflict areas with greater stability. But policies and investments in infrastructure can play an important role in the building back better and creating the win-win solutions we need. Construction and rehabilitation of local infrastructure to create jobs. And this is the public works programs that many of our countries are going to implement to reactivate their economies. But we need to be smart in the way we use them. We need to build public work programs that are linked to infrastructure that will have productive purposes. So we not only benefit by giving salaries to unemployed workers, but also on the infrastructure they will build that will be linked to productive activities. And that's why we need targeted investments in infrastructure to disadvantaged areas and populations. This is what we do at FAO with the Hand in Hand initiative. We target areas in the territorial approaches, and academia can play a crucial role in working with us in identifying these territorial approaches. Urbanization in both rural and urban areas are transforming the food systems with implications for infrastructure. Dietary changes brings an opportunity for farmers, potentially strong links between rural areas and small cities, which are the transition cities, opportunities for inclusive transformation, more access to service inputs and markets if there is proximity to urban centers. But the required infrastructure to make the most of these possibilities is not there. In some contexts, smaller infrastructure projects that are more distributed on the territory are best value for money. We are doing mapping exercises to identify centers and to identify catchment areas across Africa. FAO has been doing important work in mapping urban centers and the surrounding rural areas that refer to an urban center for good services and employment opportunities. For each urban center, we indicate its urban-rural catchment area. That is the area over which the urban center exerts a direct influence on the rural location. Urban-rural catchment areas are identified by traveling time to the perimeter of urban settlements of different sizes. Large cities, populations over 1 million, which are shown in black, intermediate cities, populations between 251 million, shown in blue, and small cities and towns, populations between 20,000 and 250, shown in orange. For a given rural location, we identify an urban center of reference for that location. A hierarchy of urban centers by population size, largest to smallest, is used to determine which center is the point of reference for a given rural location. Proximity to a larger center dominates over a smaller one in the same travel time category. Rural pixels that are outside the catchment area, in other words, they are farther than 3 hours away from urban settlements of at least 20,000 people, are defined as either dispersed towns or hinterlands. This effort, for example, in the case of Nigeria, allows us to try to understand where are these catchment areas. Here we take a closer look to the diversity in urban-rural catchment areas in Nigeria. For visual purposes, the black dots mark the centroids of the urban settlements. Compared to other countries in Africa, Nigeria has a diverse set of urban-rural catchment areas in all city size categories. Once urban-rural catchment areas are identified, it is important to look at how people are distributed across them, which we call the urban-rural continuum. The case for investment and improving infrastructure in the intermediate and smaller cities is much stronger by also showing the population that gravitates around them. This is the people that we're going to connect. It highlights the role of smaller cities as points of intermediation and agro-industrialization. We use spatial data for the year 2015 to break down the population share that gravitates around the cities of different sizes and different by travel time. Similar to the maps that we mentioned before, this chart shows the darkest colors for the populations in the urban areas: black, large cities; blue, intermediate cities; orange, small cities and towns. The corresponding lighter shades reflect the population in the catchment area, which lightness increased by travel time: less than an hour, 1 to 2 hours, and 2 to 3 hours. Percentage of the population that gravitates in or around intermediate and smaller cities, the sum of the blue and the orange bars in the graph. So approximately 63 of the global population. In sub-Saharan Africa, this increases to 77% of the rural population. 59% gravitates around the urban centers for less than 250,000 people around. These findings show that intermediate and smaller cities are key in mediating transformation processes and their inclusiveness. However, in many countries, resources are disproportionately allocated to larger cities without taking into consideration the urban-rural interlinkages. We need to do this, and we need to identify these areas. There is considerable variation across African countries in population distribution along the urban-rural continuum. The prominence of large cities' catchment areas can range between 15% in Madagascar to 60% or to 40% in South Africa. And the role of small cities, although always sizable, can go from 43% in Nigeria to 70% in Tanzania. This means that there is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to setting up infrastructure priorities. Here, we highlight the variation in remote populations. The lightest orange denotes the share of the population that lives 2 to 3 hours to a small city or town of at least 20,000 people. The greens show the share of the population in dispersed towns and hinterlands that live more than 3 hours away from any city or town over 20,000 people. For Madagascar, a sizable population in remote areas, dispersed towns and hinterlands, will benefit from infrastructure that help them to link up with the rest of the territory. So reaching remote rural areas will make sense only for certain countries where there is significant concentrations of population. But what is the portfolio of infrastructure investments we need? If a substantial share of the population is living in remote areas, it makes sense to prioritize connecting them to an urban center through better infrastructure. If the vast majority of people already live within 2 hours of an urban city of 20,000 people or more, then prioritize intermediate and smaller cities as points of intermediation and agro-industrialization. Putting in place the physical and information infrastructure to transition to higher value-added food supply chains to respond to urbanization. And better integration of rural-urban value chains to reduce post-harvest losses, for example, by improving facilities and linking better to markets our producers. Now, one topic which is important when we talk about the portfolio of infrastructure is the complementarities. Complementarities of infrastructure are central. We know that in infrastructure investments of roads, electricity, water, sanitation, and ICTs had lower value when built independently. We need to find ways to create compacts, packages of infrastructure. That's what will make a difference. And today that's central. If we are going to talk about e-commerce, we need to have the platform. We need to have the connectivity, a type of infrastructure. We also need to have mobile money. You need the internet, but you also need to have the capacity to move the goods. And if the road infrastructure is not there, the network is not built, it won't allow us to have e-commerce. So let me conclude by saying that there is a fast transformation of food systems that is needed to deliver nutritious food and improve the affordability of healthy diets for all. And this requires the provision of public goods like roads, railroads, and transport service. It requires a broad array of infrastructure investments along the entire food value chain. Depending on the context, investments in infrastructure need to be climate smart and resilient, targeted to areas of more stability in conflict settings, focus on job creation, and targeted the most disadvantaged groups during economic recessions, and targeted to those territories where large part of the rural populations gravitate around the urban centers. We need to create that change. We need to create the transformation of the food systems. If we don't transform today our agro-food systems, we won't be able to achieve SDG 2. Thank you very much, and I wish Academia the most of the success in the future. And we are going to work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maximo. And I think, Osman, I hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Minister. Thank you for leading us through this first part of the program. It is a pleasure now for myself to welcome the members, the panelists of the next roundtable for the next 30 minutes to reflect together on the keynotes, the presentation we have seen so far. I would like to invite, of course, first you, Madam Minister, Your Excellency, to stay on the podium for the panel. Then I would ask Dr. Johan Swinen, Director General of IFPRI, to join you as well on this panel. I would also ask Dr. Paul Engel, AKADEMIYA2063 board member, to join you on this panel. Let me check if our colleague Etherin Cousin is still around to also join us on the panel. All right. I would like to welcome you all and thank you for your time and joining us. You heard Maximo Torero talk about the importance of infrastructure, not just in guiding recovery, but also helping us sustain the pace of growth we have seen over the last 2 decades, but even accelerated so that we can overcome the many decades of stagnation we've gone through in the 70s and 80s. So infrastructure is no doubt one of the most important sectors. And the other presentation by Professor Njuguna talked about also recovery and what we need to do, not just to recover from this shock, but also to prepare for future shocks to come. All right, so I would like to start with with your Swinen, you heard great emphasis by Maximo Torero on the rural-urban dynamics and what that could mean for growth and recovery. And let me say, perhaps to preface this, that Africa has not only had the fastest rate of urbanization in the world recently, but a lot of the urbanization actually is not going into large mega cities. It does a bit of it, but the smaller cities are growing bigger. So it's almost like if urbanization is moving into the rural areas rather than the rural folks moving to the big megapoles. So the smaller towns that Maximo talked about are expanding across Africa. As a research and a knowledge center, looking at growth linkages, dynamics of the things that are getting the economy going, there were times when rural-urban linkages and multipliers were very high on the agenda. Are we still, focusing, wondering about the dynamics, rural-urban, because Africa may be the last continent dealing with it now, so that may fall off the global agenda a little bit. But how could a center like the International Food Policy Research Institute help us understand these new dynamics as they emerge in Africa in order to be able to foster the recovery that we are on and recover further from COVID?
Thank you, Usman. That's not an easy question to answer. So, well, I think, first of all, Maximo, as usually, gave a great presentation, very convincing, supported by data, etc. Now, I've been involved in a number of studies, actually, on the urban-rural interlinkage, particularly the role of mega cities and the role of intermediate cities over the past couple of years, actually looking mostly on East Africa, where we got data from, together with researchers from IFPRI. And essentially what we found is that we find the linkages between the urban areas and the rural areas and the impact of that on productivity growth, use of inputs, access to market, etc., is very strong. Okay, and it's a non-linear relationship in the sense that it goes at some point, in terms of travel costs, to what you can travel relatively easily, and then it goes down very quickly. Okay, and so clearly infrastructure can play a very important role there. I think what Maximo brought out very well, strongly as well, is the role of towns, if you want, or secondary cities, whatever you want to call it. And I think these are very important. And that's also something when you look at other parts of the world, for example, in Europe, these secondary towns have played a very important role because also I think the social implications are different. Migration to a mega city is different than when you live in the rural areas and you migrate to a town which is much closer. The family links are stronger, going back and forward is an option. Almost daily commuting or weekly commuting is much easier. So these things are very different. So if you can gain a big chunk of the efficiency gains in terms of from the rural-urban interlinkages, while at the same time have less social disruptions, okay, I think particularly in that part or in that framework, these secondary towns can play a very important role. Okay, there's also new evidence coming out that when people migrate from rural areas to urban areas, the impact on nutrition is not linear. Okay, initially, people would think that people who migrate to the cities have the nutrition of the children, etc., improves. That turns out to be non-linear as well. So moving to secondary towns seems actually we have better nutrition outcomes to mega cities. Part of it is access to food, the cost of access to healthy food, etc., and in terms of opportunity cost of time as well, which seems to be very different. Okay, so also there, I think there's an interesting issue to be discussed further. And so in that links, interesting to your story or your question about the growth of these secondary cities, which is really important in Africa, I think. Let me leave it at that.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Ayo. Let me go to Her Excellency Minister Mukeshimana Of course, Rwanda, as many other countries around the globe, has been affected by COVID, albeit at a very, very low level and very well managed. Yet there may have had been some effects on agriculture because of confinement and other things. So as we sit here and reflect on the impact and how we get out of it and recover, we heard Professor Njuguna telling us how much has affected growth in general, but also how much it is uncertain when we're going to be recovered to reach our pre-COVID growth rates. I know your country, your government is dealing with that. We just wanted to hear from you how your government has worked to first mitigate the impact of COVID on agriculture in the rural areas. And what are you doing right now to reboot, if that was necessary, the agricultural sector and economic life in general in Rwanda?
Thank you. I think we have been hit as everyone else. And at the beginning, the COVID-19 was an imported case, but over time, it became obviously to be a community transmitted thing. So in that case, it also reached the rural areas where the agriculture is taking place. So far, we have not had a disastrous situation in the rural communities, but still it has affected drastically the economy and the social life. At the beginning, we had almost a lockdown for 3 months, March to almost June. And what we were seeing was mostly the informal sector in the cities being the most affected because those were no longer being able to work as they used to be. So those required a whole range of social protection mechanism to make sure that they are surviving. And then we have been opening slowly. But in a rural area, what we saw, first of all, we defined agriculture to be an essential service, the same way it was for the health services and the food services. So that was clear, and we defined the safety mechanism that can keep the community doing agriculture. But we could see very quickly that it started by the demand side, because majority of the produce that were ending up in hotels, that were ending up in restaurants, that were like, we saw that the demand side was terribly damaged. And then we were fighting the crisis of finding markets for the farmers. I think Ambassador Kazin will speak about that as we worked together in fixing some of the issues. So that was the most obvious thing. But now what we see is that we thought the community were doing agriculture as they were supposed to do, but somehow the financial sector not functioning affected again the production capacity of the agriculture people, because some of them are telling us now they couldn't go to the bank and withdraw some money to buy what they wanted to buy or to hire the labor for agriculture. So in a way, we tend to feel that we are controlling, but it's really hard to control all the pieces to avoid the damages. That's what we're seeing, and the economy has been drastically hit. As we see, the recent GDP numbers were bad. But again, as a whole nation, we have sat down and discussed what we can do. So we shaped up what we call a recovery mechanism, where we define the priority sectors that shape that budget planning. That included the health, agriculture, the digital aspects that are helping us at least to deal with the health and the trade issues. There are a good number of sectors that we said, let's keep them on the top of priorities, and then we channel our limited resources so that we can see that we recover. But within the recovery mechanism also, we put what we call a recovery fund that is looking at supporting all the industries that have been hit by the COVID. That includes the service industry, majority of it was affected. And those, they take a big chunk of money, but also we have categorized it in a way that is reaching the big private sector, the medium, the SMEs, even the micro ones. So our challenge now as agriculture sector is to making sure that the micro ones can get to the facility, because most of the time these ones are informal. So we have put the conditions that the cash flow this year should be at least 50% of last year. So our challenge is to making sure that to me, I think we have heard what is needed and on the ground. I mean, it's really hard to make sure that all the pieces are put together to protect our people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. You really addressed the complexity of the challenges coming from COVID. And this is really something specific to COVID. It is one crisis that has in itself all the major crises we have gone through over the last decade or so. You just talked about the financial issues of it, but also it has the issue of health, because the health crisis first, like Ebola would have, the financial aspects like we had in the global financial crisis. It disrupted food systems like when you had the global food price hikes. It disrupts production systems like we would have in the case of droughts and heavy floods. So it just takes all of that in one place. So it's a huge challenge, very, very difficult to deal with. So I can appreciate the complexity that your government is facing, but also really are impressed by the systematic approach that's being used to deal with it. And I think that's what it will require. So let me move to our third panelist, Dr. Paul Engel, member of the Board of Trustees of AKADEMIYA2063. Paul, this is, the crisis is hitting Africa at a time when the economies were growing steady, where the pace of progress and the sustained character of it is unprecedented. And then you have this massive crisis. You know, when nothing is moving and you get hit, you don't lose much. But if so much is going right for you and you get hit, so the opportunity costs are really, really high. So we will have to figure out how we can minimize the extent of this damage into the future. In other words, how we can turn a corner and reboot the economies and start quickly. And given the multifaceted nature of this crisis, just like we heard from Excellency Geraldine Mukashimana, there's so many different moving pieces. So understanding the relationship, the complexity, in order to tailor right policies requires, I guess, you know, a different way of looking at things and being able to understand complexity more than in the past. So Paul, having been in the business of advising policies and doing research in policies, where would you see the role of organizations like AKADEMIYA2063, but also the scientific community at large in Africa? Where is their role in helping put Africa back on its feet and to shorten the period that we're going to be suffering from this crisis? What can the scientific and academic community bring to the table, and how should they best do that?
And this is a question for 5 minutes. I'll try. I'm humbled by the question because it's the one that we are all struggling with, of course. When I was listening to Maximo and Njuguna, three things occurred to me. One is it's really what is going to happen if this pandemic is put under control. Are we going back to business as usual, or should we be prepared to say business will not be as usual even after the pandemic? We will have to look for a different type of transformatory process. I think in those types of questions are the questions that the knowledge infrastructure, the institutes like academia and their national counterparts need to look into, because and we think of it a lot in Europe as well, because it's not clear. Some things are clear. One is working at home will stay for a particular percentage. We don't know how much, but we do. People will not be able to join easily in huge gatherings. So we will have to have different ways of doing that. We will also have to think of the economies of certain economic activities, in the sense that drawing out more resources from our earth may not be the best way of moving forward. So the one question that comes up, I think, is a big question: is this crisis the start of thinking in terms of whether maybe inclusive and sustainable development is even more of an opportunity to be more resilient in the face of the next crisis? And so in that sense, I think the knowledge institutes, the academia, universities, institutes like academia need to reflect on that and need to be able to propose sensible proposals to governments in terms of policies, in terms of investments, in terms of and without forgetting about the economic and employment consequences that those recommendations will have. That's also one of the things that I when I listened to Maximo, he was talking about infrastructure, and my conviction is that knowledge infrastructure is as important as roads and marketing systems. And we have learned, I think, over the last 10, 20 years, Professor Mazzucato has been very vocal on this one, that this important role of governments in creating this knowledge and supporting it and giving it the space to actually operate. So I'm very glad that in Rwanda you have found some space, and in Senegal and in other places to do this type of research and think about these long-term questions as well. And the other thing that occurred to me was I lived in West Africa, in the north of Ghana, for a long time, and I was always amazed about the marketing system everybody had there. Seemed to be everybody had there. The one every 3 days, there were different set of cities or towns or villages that had markets. And so you would always be able to go within 20 kilometers, you would always be able to go to a market every day. But sometimes they were in small cities, then in medium cities, then in large cities. And I think one of the things that we have to do if we think about improving the systems in Africa is to have a really good look at the systems that are there, the assets that are already there for hundreds of years sometimes, and empower those assets in our efforts to transform the economy and the rural space. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Paul, for saying. Okay, so thank you very much. So what I would do perhaps is just to ask Johan and the minister if they have any other statement they would like to make. I got a couple more questions, but since we're heading towards the top of the hour for this roundtable, I wanted to give you at least a chance to add your own thinking to this rather than responding to my questions. So let me start with you, Jo, if there's any message, any thought you would like to share with the audience here on the issues we're talking about.
Thanks very much, Usman. Yes, I have a couple of points actually that I think I would like to add here. One is that I think a lot has been said already on COVID impacts or something, but maybe what has not been sufficiently emphasized is the heterogeneity of the effects, okay? And so we have massive heterogeneity across value chains. Some commodities have been very heavily affected, some much less. But also even when you look into Africa, okay, for example, we had a seminar on that at IFPRI last week. And so one of the things which really came out, if you look at things, that the way countries have been affected is very different. I think Professor Ndungu referred to that when he referred to oil importing and oil exporting countries. Okay, and their impacts are very different. Also, terms of trade of some of the commodities have been different because sometimes demand has gone up for some reason, demand has gone down and things like that. And so the heterogeneity, I think, is really important, even when you look into regions in Africa, and certainly for Africa as a whole. I think that's important to keep in mind. The second thing is that what I get a feeling of, okay, but we don't have really good data on it. It's there's a lot of creativity going on, a lot of innovation, both in the public value chains, if you want, and the private value chains. So public value chains, again, I think Dr. Ndungu referred to it in the health sector, but it's also in food distribution programs, etc. I mean, communities, individuals, cooperatives try to find ways getting around the lockdowns or the social distancing regulation, which is preventing them. On the private value chains, I know from talking to many people in both small-scale entrepreneurs and large-scale food companies that they're really trying to do a lot of innovation to try to make them strong. I think this could have a really big impact in the medium term. When you talk to entrepreneurs, for example, they say, you know, we're doing things now which we had planned for the next 15 years, and we're doing them in 6 months, okay? The point is we know very little about that systematically. So I talk to people tell me, and I think there's a role for organizations like academia, for IFPRI as well, get systematic data on it, get better information about what is actually going on in reality on these things. Digital transformation. And then my last point, that also relates to the policy area, okay, or the political economy, if you want. I think that the reason, for example, India now has introduced a number of really dramatic reforms, okay, which had been on the policy platform for a long time, but they just couldn't get it through the political system. And with COVID, it shocked the political equilibrium, and policy reforms which were not possible before were there. I'm sure in Africa and some of the countries there must be similar examples, but it's also a role again for academia to work with policymakers to provide these policy advice, guidance on reforms, which may be possible now, which were not possible before. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jo. These are great ideas. Yes, I know that IFPRI has a very important body of work around COVID, and also know, especially your trade team recently had a major webinar on that. So we're in touch with them. Actually, next week, one of your researchers is going to be giving a webinar in our series at AKADEMIYA2063, so Antoine Bouet. So we're very much aware of what's happening there. So thank you for that contribution. Let me ask Her Excellency, Minister Mukeshimana, if she has one last thought also she would like to share with us on the panel.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Osman, I think most of the things have been said, but one of the lessons that we are learning is that, as Professor Ndungu has mentioned, all of these countries are being hit hard and they are running into borrowing to fix their health issues. But let's assume that the COVID is ending sometimes, and it's going to be really delicate for them, because keeping the fiscal space is going to be a delicate thing. And as a human beings, and in Rwanda, we have been really pioneer of everything. You can imagine everyone, as soon as it's finished, everyone will forget where we have been. And I think it's going to be tough for these countries to move back to the path where they were. So that call for institutions like academia and the IFPRI to be there really to support with data and information that can help to move. And again, African countries, we were still struggling to deploy the science information so that we can produce kind of breakthrough and increase the productivity in agriculture, being both for crops and livestock. As we were still struggling there. So you can imagine now going back to the whole, it's going to require to probably triple, quadruple the effort into the area of science and research so that the countries can go back on the path. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Mukashimana. Let me ask Paul if you have one last thought you would like to share with us, Paul, before we move to the next session.
No, indeed, just to confirm that this complexity that we have seen and that the different speakers have put up on the table indeed requires an enormous effort of everybody, and the knowledge sector in particular. So I have no other issue to add. Thank you.
Very much. And so join me in thanking everybody who has joined the roundtable. Paul, thank you for you. Thank you as well to you and to Her Excellency for the roundtable. So now we move to the next part of the program, which is the presentation of our work of AKADEMIYA2063 on COVID-19. After my presentation, I'll hand over to our board member, Dr. Isman El-Wafi, to share the round of discussion, starting with Terry Such, one of our other board members, to start the discussion. So I'll move now to my presentation and share my screen. Let me go back. So share my screen. Okay, here I am. Is everybody seeing the presentation? Okay, very good.
Thanks.
All right, so we started July 1 in the middle of the pandemic, and we said we're going to dedicate most of our resources, about 80 to 90% of everything we do every day is going to be on understanding COVID itself, how it manifests itself, and how we can respond to it. So we haven't done much, and we intend to continue that pace until the end of the year, because we think COVID is going to be for us for a while, if not COVID itself, its implications and impacts and effects. So I would like to guide you through this quickly. I would like to say that we have a dedicated portal for this work on the AKADEMIYA2063 website. If you click on the website akademia2063.org, you'll see the link to the portal, and you'll see the body of work in this area. So we are in this work focusing on areas that will or cannot be addressed by global organizations, either because it's just too specific, like staples foods, your cassavas, your fonio's, your cowpeas, your yams, and the like are not on the global scene. Or you're talking about the rural local communities, they don't have that reach, they're not present on the ground. So they cannot address those issues, or they just have access to current data, given confinement and difficulty to move. And the other thing, if you don't have an established network already with the rich, it's very hard to get the data to do the job that you would like to do. So we're trying to focus on that as Academia 2063 to add value to what the global agencies are doing. Right. So I was saying just a minute ago that the breadth of the COVID crisis is unprecedented. We haven't had anything like that. It combines the elements of all major crises of the last decades. A health crisis like Ebola has been in West Africa, which was a major hit to the regional economy. It's a food crisis, kind of like the global food price spikes of 2008 has been across the globe. A financial crisis like the financial markets crisis in the mid-2010s, and even the crisis of weather shocks like recurrent droughts and floods because of its disruption of production systems, right? And then to probably top all of that, in each and every one of these crises, only one part of the globe was affected, or some economies were spared more than others, so they could kickstart the recovery process. Right now, everybody has been touched and touched badly. You look around and you ask yourself, who is going to be the one leading the recovery process, because they were less affected. And that's real tough situation and unprecedented. So we focus on 4 work streams on the Academia 2063's COVID agenda. First, we're saying, just like we know that existing preconditions make some of us more vulnerable to the pandemic and its consequences, the same applies to local communities. Communities where you have high poverty incidence, where you have high level of food insecurity, where the nutrition status are low, where access to healthcare is limited, where you have a large disease burden and high population density, those communities either have the least capacity to absorb the shock from COVID, or when they are hit, they are being hit very hardly and very badly because of the density of the population. And by the way, we're not using density as population divided by square meter. We use satellite imagery to look at inhabited areas and calculating population density based on the inhabited areas. So you might find a place in Mali with a high density compared to a place in Senegal or a smaller country like Ghana, just because we're not taking the whole country, but we're looking at inhabited space. So here you have those different dimensions. We built an indicator for each one of them, whether it's food security, nutrition, poverty, access to healthcare. We look at all those different indicators, and these different maps positioning different countries on the scale of those different indicators, whether they are relative to the region, much more vulnerable or less vulnerable or not vulnerable at all. So the scale is relative. We are comparing every country with the West African average. We're about to do the same work for Southern Africa and Eastern Africa. So red means you're more vulnerable, considering that indicator, than the rest of the region. Green means that you're less vulnerable than the rest of the region, looking at that indicator. So we'll combine all those different indicators into a composite vulnerability index to let regions and countries know that although COVID hasn't reached these places yet, and thank God COVID is progressing very slow in Africa, you need to know where it's going to be inflicting the most damage when it reaches there, so that you know how you can either cordon off those areas, or you can be ready to position yourself in those areas so that you can deal with the crisis when it hits there. It's just like in the north, they do with the snow trucks. When they know snow is coming, they know exactly where to position the snow trucks, because those are the areas that are going to be hit bad even before the snow comes. So we're doing something like that for the regions and the countries. In a small country like Senegal, you see how heterogeneous the different areas are in terms of their vulnerability or their pre-existing conditions when COVID would hit. So there's several bulletins and several briefs on several countries and regions that are published on the website, and you're welcome to go and take a look at it. I'm not going to go into the details there. So then the next area is staple food prices and tracking. We know that you would find a lot about rice and wheat and maize, but it's very hard and unlikely to find a lot about millet and sorghum and fonio and the like. But those are the foods that people depend on, especially in the most vulnerable communities. So we are not just looking at those staples, but also we're looking at small markets across the countries, including urban centers, absolutely, but also a lot more rural small markets to know exactly what's happening on the ground, to have our finger on the pulse of markets for staples food. And there we looked at several countries, and the trends are quite interesting and very, very different, just like you were saying. If you're dealing with natural surplus countries like Malawi, for example, and Mozambique that export into their regions, what COVID has done is to depress prices across the board because surpluses could not leave. You deal with countries that have a much more nuanced situation. For example, in Senegal, there was a very clear trend. Surplus areas have faced a depressed price situation because surpluses could not leave, but in deficit areas are seeing prices spiking. Okay, so knowing where and how the prices behave will empower government also to deal with the impact of access to food. Maximo talked about it, and then to be able to program distribution of food or vouchers or whatever it is. But knowing that in real time is extremely important. An example here just in Senegal and how quickly the COVID impact on staple prices has expanded across the countries. So in Senegal, in March, at the beginning of the pandemic, only 8% of the markets was significantly higher than what one would have expected. I mean, prices only in 8% of the markets were higher than what one would have expected seasonally to be the price level. So rather normal, okay? Nothing extraordinary. That was March. You fast forward by June, almost half of the prices were facing, half of the markets were facing prices that are higher than 15% of the price level that were to be expected at that time of the year for that different product in those markets, right? And you look at the prices where the gray and the yellow, those are markets where prices went up by more than 5% and 15%. So about 70% of the markets, just between March and June, were dealing with much higher prices due to the different measures around dealing with COVID, transport sector interventions, confinements, and market disruptions and the like. Okay. So the propagation of the impact across space has been just very, very rapid. And knowing what this means for livelihoods and how to deal with it is quite important for countries. You just talked about the international trade aspect of it. In fact, if you look at the World Bank projections, the impact of COVID on global prices goes in all directions. It goes down, it goes up, and extremely up to 40% changes, but sometimes very, very small. So depending on your level of exposure, you are hit by the changes in global markets, both price, both demand, both market access, and also market access. So we looked at all of that for specific African countries and African regions. We just finished one for the East Africa region. We are now finalizing one for the Southern Africa region. When you look at different countries, you do have an impact on export performance, and you do have an impact on growth and poverty because of that. So the ramification at the macro level is quite important. So here are some of the outcomes in terms of how import and export price indexes, because of your composition of export and imports, are behaving in responding to global market shocks, and how that affects your growth and your rate of poverty in the countries. So there, again, here several bulletins and briefs on the website, and please take a look at them and go to the website. The fourth and last work stream is to deal with production system disruptions. You know, as the things are going right now, with the difficulty to travel, with the difficulty to get access to data, to know what's happening in rural areas, extremely difficult to know now what's going to happen to the production systems. Of course, if you wait into the harvest time, we will know where, you know, harvest has been hit or not. But what's important is for us now to know how the growing season proceeding is progressing. When we cannot know whether farmers are healthy or not, whether they're working full-time or half-time, whether they had access to seeds or fertilizers or inputs or anything that will determine what their harvest is going to look like 2 months down the road. So to overcome that, we set up a team using remote sensing and machine learning, they basically artificial intelligence, to try and figure out how the food production systems are behaving from remote sense data and normalized difference vegetation index to the land surface temperature to precipitation to everything that you could figure out using remote sensing. And we use computer intelligence to make sense out of it. Okay, and once we do, we're capable of already telling government we expect things to change vis-a-vis last year or so. So like you would see in the example of Senegal, we had a map of production of millet at pixel level in 2017. We predicted, forecast millet production at pixel level as well for 2020 while the season is on course. And we computed the changes where the government might expect surpluses and deficits and be able to anticipate where they might find difficulties dealing with the COVID and its impact on the production systems. Again, here, if you go to the portal, at the website, AKADEMIYA2063.org, you will see the publications coming out of this work program. The dedicated portal not only is a repository of all the publications, but also data and charts that were not published, but are background documents that will be important for folks to access. So it is a rich collection of data and charts and maps for everybody there. We also do have a webinar series every Thursday. We couldn't have one today because of the launch event. And I will advertise the next one next Thursday, October 1, is going to be on the impact of COVID on cross-border trade, regional trade in Africa, to be given by Dr. Antoine Bouet, our former colleagues from the International Food Policy Research Institute. So we have the webinar series, we have the portal, and soon we'll be adding a podcast that will be discussing experiences on the ground and lessons to be learned and to be shared. So this is the work that we are doing at AKADEMIYA2063 on COVID, and we'll continue to drive until the end of the year. So it will mean now my pleasure to hand over to our board member, Dr. Ismahan Al-Wafi, to share the discussion and call on our other board member, Terry Sach, as a lead discussant before we open for questions. Let me say to the audience, you're welcome to send your questions via text messages to our team, and your question will be transmitted. Right, so Ismahan, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osman, and thank you really for the great presentation. I've learned a lot from it, and I'm sure really all these tools are very, very pertinent to Africa in normal days and even more in crisis time, like in COVID pandemic. Without any further ado, it will be my pleasure to give the floor to Her Excellency Terry to give us her opinion from your presentation and the situation. Good to see you, Terry. Go ahead, please.
Thanks very much, Ismahan, and very good to see you. And thank you, Ismahan, for the presentation. Really interesting. And I guess my overall sort of, the overall message I'm getting is how important the links are between health systems and food systems, and the real need to highlight those links. And in your presentation and in the work that AKADEMIYA2063 is doing, you're drawing the very close links between the response to the COVID crisis and food supply chains and their nutrition and food security outcomes. They're really, really important links. And you know, I think it's fantastic that you've been able to use your research to highlight those links. I think there are other really important links between health systems and human health systems and food systems. And I'll mention a couple of those. Zoonotic diseases. We know, of course, that COVID is a zoonotic disease, and so is Ebola. A really key link between food systems and health systems. Antimicrobial resistance, another one. And of course, we know that there are many, many threats to our food systems across the world. And you know, just some in particular I'd like to highlight now, of course, climate change and the desert locusts really ravaging East Africa at the moment. And I think all of this really shows us how important it is to have timely information on what's happening and what those threats are and who's most vulnerable to those threats, and how important it is to be able to use that information to shape policy responses to those threats. And I think all of that really underlines why the mission of AKADEMIYA2063 is so important, and why, you know, I'm so thrilled that you've asked me to serve as your board member. I think the real key challenge that AKADEMIYA2063 is facing, and indeed all of us are facing in our roles, is about how to get those policy recommendations taken up and policy uptake. And in particular, I guess I'd be really keen to hear the views of others on really indeed how can we strengthen uptake of good policy. Thanks very much, and back over to you, Ismahan.
Thank you very much, Terry. And I could not agree more with you. Really, I think the presentation showed us the power of data, and we all know really how important to have those tools for policymakers to take the right decision at the right time. With that, Osman, I think, do we have any questions that we would like to pose to both you and Terry before we move on? I'm trying to look into the chat if there are any questions until we get that. Oh, yes, we have Jime. Yeah, please, Jime, go ahead. Your Excellency, you are muted. Please put on the mic.
I said my most sincere apologies to things got crazy and I had to present the project, big seminar and webinar and so on. In any case, I'm glad to be part of the last leg. And speaking of data and the effect of COVID, that's why we discussed, excuse me, that's why we discussed throughout the entire day. Basically, what we said was that given the tools we have at our disposal, the cadre harmonisé in the region here, the IPC that FAO uses, so the two of us combine the two tools to actually generate data that feed into the world report. So the issue now ahead of us, and I'll come to the question, that is, it used to be people can drop in at the end of the growing season, the national teams, the technical advisors, the financial advisors, and so on, everybody gets together and then we analyze and we put the process through the cadre harmonisé. We do not necessarily have the luxury of doing that. And so basically, and what I'm saying is I'm also pleading for academia to sort of take a glance at what is going on in this region, about 17 countries that we service, the likes of ECOWAS, UMY, and SILS, and SILS is a technical arm. And whether we stay or we go, the issue here is that with respect to data, I think academia could play a key role, either looking at what has been already collected and analyzed and a very rigorous process through the cadre harmonisé, or bringing in its expertise to make sure that the data really meet the top-notch standard. And so whether it's collected via academia or SILS and UMY ECOWAS, it's SILS who generally collects it, we should be able to really come out with the key data. We need to put to rest the issue of data, and we must have reliable systems. And I'm glad to see that IE is also in the mix to be able to help us, help Academia 2063 in that process. So just partially sort of bringing the issue to the floor, partially sort of appealing, and let's try to make something out of this, because without good data, solid data, we just cannot really make policy and good decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. I'll give the floor to Terry or Osman to comment.
Okay, very good. Let me see if our panelists have questions. Ron, we still have Paul and Yo and Minister Mukashimana, if they have any questions on the COVID presentation and the work. And if there are any questions also from the participants, please do send your text messages to us. There's one question here from Sheikh Sadi Bufal from Israel. Thank you, Sadibu. Says, congratulations and welcome to Academia 2063. Wish you all the best. My question is, how do you see or plan to collaborate with NARS? Thank you, Sheikh. You've been a partner and a collaborator for a long time of this program. If I may, Isman, can I answer that one?
Yes, please. Yeah, please go ahead.
So there are two avenues to forge this partnership, but also should just preface this by saying that we promised to our board yesterday and day before yesterday that there are two things we intend to do, in addition to trying very hard to stay a leader in data and analytics, is to use our proximity to be a catalyst for the mobilization of African expertise. We have made this commitment and this promise to our board. And second, we have said we would like to be a bridge between global centers of expertise, the IFPRIs of the world, and the other global think tanks, ODI and what have you, with the African science community. So that's my prefacing the answer to your question, Sadibu. Concretely, over the last few years, we've been deploying the regional strategic analysis and knowledge support systems, RESACs, to work with countries to help set up at the individual country level knowledge management functions, not new structures, but functions, embed them within existing institutions that we call the country strategic analysis and knowledge support systems, through which now we're linking up with the knowledge centers in the country through what we call the local analysis network. It is still something in progress, but that is going to be something we'll be emphasizing quite a bit and building out under Academia 2063 to connect with the local centers of knowledge. Then the other platform, Sadiba, and you're a member of it, is through the African Growth and Development Policy Modeling Consortium, where we are mobilizing a critical mass of world-class modelers across Africa. And thank you for having been a member for that long. We are now about 230 across more than 30 African countries. We have the hope and the ambition to take that to 500 members. And once we do, we work through those selected members. We work with their institution, their home institution, whether they are NARS or Faculty of Economics or somewhere else, we'll be working with them. So we have all intentions and we'll put a lot of resources into enhancing this partnership and collaboration. So thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, Osman. And I salute really this facilitation coordination role, because it's very much needed to bring all the experts together at the continent level and to facilitate as well collaboration and cross-pollination with the international organization.
Thank you.
Terry, please jump in if you want at any moment.
Sure. Well, I mean, I just really, all I could do is underline what Jime and Usman have already said. Really, the importance of collaboration is fundamental. And, you know, having worked for a donor, I absolutely know how, you know, how decision makers don't like to be presented with two different versions of the facts. They like everyone to agree on one version of the truth. And in order to do that, you need to collaborate. And Jime mentioned the collaboration between FAO and IPC, FAO's IPC and still really, really important and influential. And of course, I don't need to encourage you, Usman, to collaborate because I know you are already, but just to underline how important that is. Thanks.
Thank you. Can I comment on the Jimmy question?
Yes, Osman, please. Yeah.
The cadre harmonisé, for those who don't know it, or the harmonized framework, has been an amazing innovation by Jimmy's organization in West Africa, SILS. Everybody knows that in the 70s, the Sahel was hit by one of the most droughts in the world, a lot of suffering. I was a high school boy then, I remember. I wish nobody will ever see anything like that. You'll have money in your pocket, but you won't have food because there's nothing to be bought, zero. What everybody was listening then was where in the part of town there was food to be sold, rice or millet, and everybody will converge. There won't be anything there, right? So it was very bad. And SILS was created after that. We did have other crises, but you have not seen the kind of famine or the kind of suffering we had because thanks to that mechanism, Sahelian countries are in a position very early on to have a good understanding of where the harvest is progressing well and poorly, where they expect to have hardships and by how much. It's a very sophisticated tool of prevention and intervention. And they have a collaborative, collective, solidarity-based mechanism to deal with that. So that is an amazing tool, and it's now being adopted by all of ECOWAS in West Africa. And we do work with, the next bulletin, Excellence coming out, Jimmy, is going to be exactly on the Sahel and the experience of the cadre harmonisé, and the difference is made, right? We also worked very closely with Rezemawo, which is one of your networks under that infrastructure, to do the price analysis across West Africa as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Osman. And I want to just stress, since unfortunately Joaquim couldn't give a presentation on the linkages with the United Nations Food System Summit, is that we are developing different papers. I was involved particularly in the paper on Track Action 5, which is building resilience and vulnerability, building resilience to vulnerability and shocks and stresses. And we have highlighted really the cadre harmonisé as one of really of the success stories, because we do need certain those success stories to replicate them across the continent and across the world. So absolutely. And I see a lot of also opportunities for academia to work with the United Nations Food System Summit, because all the work we are doing, guys, is really the baseline that is needed and the evidence that is needed to design the new food system that we all need. So I'm looking forward to continue working with the colleagues and hopefully find really solutions that we can take to the summit in October 2021. So we're only about a year away from it. So I think there is another question from Fode. Congratulations, academia, with Fode Ndaye.
Yeah.
So looking forward to working together, supporting the required transformation on the African continent for the benefit of people. No question per se. So
we
is
look
that
forward to it. Fode is also from the UN system, based in Rwanda, and a cousin of mine. I should disclose that. So good having you.
That's okay, good. So do we have any question from the colleague on the previous panels as well? Maximo, Paul, Joe, if there is any question.
Just got one question through the message. Let me read that to you. My question is about whether and how AKADEMIYA2063 will strengthen the capacity of national institutions that collect and process much of the data needed for the analysis.
Wow.
Excellent question.
Very good question. Excellent.
Yeah. And let me say here, Arega, that it goes beyond just the institution working with us. I don't think there's anybody around here who has not heard the world complaining about lack of data. I mean, I started my career 30-something years ago, people talking about lack of data. Here I am today, we're still talking about a lack of data. It's not because we don't want to do anything, right? Because we've been complaining about it for a long time, but it is because it's complex. I was just saying yesterday to our board that the data issue can be resolved if you are innovative and smart. It cannot be solved the conventional way. We have solved the health data because it's a less complex sector. We have solved education data because of the less complex sector. Agriculture, you don't know where it starts, you don't know where it ends. So you could not have not even a handful of institutions that can cover the data need of agriculture in their mandates. So you really have a large number of institutions, some more are mandated, some others and some less, but they are working on different segments of the agricultural sector or the value chains with different standards, different frequency, different protocols. Even if everything is covered, there's not much you can do with the data that's being produced. So we have come up with what we call a smart cluster-based data collection system, smart cluster-based data system. So basically, what we're saying is that it's okay and we cannot change it. All these institutions will exist with a separate mandate and dealing with data. But can we, for a limited window of time, get everybody around the table, agree on a complete framework of data collection for agriculture, and within a few months, deal with it, have the data set, and everybody goes back to what they do. And we repeat that regularly every 3 or 4 years. We piloted it in Senegal, and Sadibou and his team were part of that group. So we identified the leading knowledge centers to work together with us. The data collection was centralized, designed centrally with quality backstopping and everything. Then we took clusters of data and bundles of data, gave it to institutions that are best qualified to collect that type of data. Within a very short period of time, Senegal has collected, our colleagues in Senegal have collected the most comprehensive data set in the country's history. And if they do that every 3 to 4 to 5 years, you will not have the big issue of data in that country any longer. And it was done by them within a time record of 1.5 years from setting up the network of institutions all the way to collecting the data across the country. So we have now at Academia a model that works, and we intend to scale it up to more countries. And that's how AREGA, we would like to work with our collaborating institutions to help solve not just the data problem, but also for the country's data problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Osman. And maybe if Jimmy want to also comment on this question, since he's dealing a lot with data and working with the countries, that as well said, own the data and collect the data.
Excuse me. What we came to do is, at least today, what we discussed today with all of us, the partners and those who put money in countries and the likes of ECOWAS and UMWAS, we decided that we really need to devolve most of these issues to the countries. We gotta strengthen the countries' capabilities, capacities to really take this issue and not only benefiting from the input or the funding from our partners and what have you. Countries need to really come to grasp with the reality that data should be their business. They should own the data. Consequently, open a line item in your budget. Ministry of Agriculture, of Health, there are about 6 or 7 different ministries that really pull from the pooled data or their individual data set, so that they must make it their business to open up an item, a line item, so that even if it's a small amount, it is likely to attract other funds. Donors would love to see this kind of commitment versus all the time waiting for a project to come, and when the project ends, and basically we get back to ground zero, and that's no good anymore. It's not acceptable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just to add to that, Ismail, if I may.
Yes.
our experience in Senegal is that with that project we run there, with $300,000 a year, if you can commit to that as a government across the years, every 4 or 5 years, you can have the best data set for your country. It doesn't cost billions and billions and tens of millions. It's very little money. You just have to be organized. And that's why we call it a smart cluster-based data system. Let you leverage the investment you've made in your institutions, a little bit of top of money, and you get the data set you need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Usman. There is another question this is the last question. We'll take 2 minutes and then we go for the closing. Ernest
Ruzindaza.
Yes, Ruzindaza. So he said, congratulations to Academia 2063. The dream became now a reality. Academia is really a huge investment base in Africa, working for Africans to transform agriculture and modernize African food systems. My question to Osman is, learning from the lessons from previous support, how Academia 2063 is equipped to continue support CAADP and Malabo Declaration. What will be the Academia delivery models?
Thank you very much, Orako Zishitiyanje. This question, of course, could only come from you, Ernest. Thank you for that. Happily and luckily, the infrastructure that have supported Malabo and CAADP over the last 10, 15 years is intact, has been conserved and protected within Academia 2063. So if anything, we're building on that. But the RISAX network, the regional presence, the country presence, the strong partnership and collaboration with the regional economic communities, with the African Union Commissions, with NPCA and everybody, that collaborative network is there. Where it is strong, it will continue to be strong. Where it is weak, we will make it stronger. The AgroDep consortium, which was in its growing phase, about a few years ago, when you were very involved on the African Union, Ernest, and driving this, it is now a mature network. They are the ones now being deployed to work to support not only countries, they are the ones driving our flagship publications like the Africa Agriculture Trade Monitor. They are the ones driving the analytics on the biennial review. They are the one at the forefront of the COVID work that we're doing. So we'll be calling upon that expertise more and more as we go to deploy it. And as we've been a service provider behind the African Union and its RECs, we'll continue to do the same thing as well. And being on the ground, the proximity will allow us even to do much better. So we're not going to invent any new wheel, but we're going to enhance and deepen the partnership and the relationship that we have to do things better on the ground. Thank you, Ismail.
Thank you very much, Osman. I think now it will be my pleasure to pass on the floor to Her Excellency Geraldine for the closing. So Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
And thank you, Osman, for all of these questions that you have been taking on. I think we are getting to the closure of this event. As it has been said multiple times, I think it's really a great achievement. I wanted to again to congratulate the IFPRI and Osman and all of the supporters. Again, I want to tell all of the partners, board members and everyone that we are delighted to have you in Rwanda. And I also want to thank everyone who contributed in one or the other way. It's been a kind of lively discussions for almost 3.5 hours. So it's really an exciting time for Africa. It's an exciting time for CAADP. I mean, I had a meeting on ESC on biannual review on, I think on Thursday, and you could see how much all of these countries are crying of data. So I think the Academia 2063 has a huge, huge challenge. So I once again want to thank everyone, and I want to close by here. So Usman, we give you a break and then you go get ready for the real work. Thank you so much for everyone.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and thank you for spending so much time with us today. We know you have a very busy schedule, and please pass our word of thanks to Right Honorable Prime Minister. So thank you everybody for joining us today, and please go to our website, look at our work uncovered and join our webinars. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Osman. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.